Hello, STEM Nation. Jeff here, and welcome to episode number 68 of STEM on Fire, where we interview practicing professionals in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math to help guide students interested in STEM careers. If you like what you hear, please share with a friend. Now let's get fired up with our guest, Martin, and I hope our chat will help ignite your passion towards a STEM career. Martin went to college pursuing an English degree with a creative writing focus and has always been interested in designing computer games, and is currently a freelance contract software developer focused on virtual reality, or VR, and video game development, and has created multiple games, and you can find him at abstractpuzzle.com. Welcome to the show, Martin. Fill any gaps and share a bit of your personal life.
Thanks for having me. I do have a blog. I've always had a bunch of blogs actually, and but the one that I focus on now is at chestris.com. So there's a bunch more about me and the games that I've worked on at chestris.com, and there's an about page with like a bibliography on it, with a long list of games that I worked on. I sort of came into gaming or game development like by way of web development. So that's one thing that you kind of left out, is I was a web developer back end for about 7 years, and then transitioned to mobile development. And now it finally I'm able to kind of focus mostly on games.
All right, Martin, thanks for that. And you can check the show notes for all the links to get connected with Martin. And Martin, one reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is because I talk to a lot of kids out there, and they all want to go design games. And you're, I'll say, the first game designer that we've had on the podcast. But you didn't come through the normal curriculum of getting a software degree or a computer science degree. You came in with an English degree, and it seems like you actually self-educated yourself starting out in web design. Could you dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I was actually always super into computer games and computers and video games, like in high school and even probably before that. And by the time I started into college, like that was definitely, I was still playing a lot of games, and I had bought my own computer by doing like a medical research trial, and and I was mostly using it for writing at the time, but of course I also gamed on it. And I started doing web development in college. So I did a little bit of web development for the English department, and then that transitioned into working at the Minnesota Daily, doing their arts and entertainment section, which was basically like a new website every week. Back then, there was no real like content management system, so it was like they just took the articles, and then there was like a Perl script that we ran, and it would turn it into web pages, and then we had to go in and hand edit the HTML every week, and and that was kind of a fun learning project, or game, an actual job. And then so when I left the U, then I kind of knew I could just get a job doing web development. And so that was the easiest path forward for me.
Martin, did you find it challenging at all, not having a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree specifically in computer science or web development, Java development? Did you find any challenges with that?
Well, I think there were definitely a lot of doors left closed to me as a result of not having that degree. Having a 4-year computer science degree, I think there's so many places that want you to work there, right? And not having one, but having worked for 3 or 4 years, there's still a lot of places that you can get a job, but it's not all the places. And I think, there were times when I thought, oh man, it'd be cool if I could, or just looking through at various times in my career, I've, been looking for a job, or, thought about moving career-wise. And basically every time there are doors that are closed because I didn't have that computer science degree. Now, will I say that it hindered me in terms of my actual programming, like day-to-day tasks? No, I think that I am just as good a developer as many or most of the computer science degree holding coworkers that I've had. But maybe it took me longer to get there. I'm not sure.
So, Martin, let's dig in here a little bit into designing games, right? Because the audience here is juniors, seniors in high school thinking about, STEM professions, and then a lot of them are probably thinking of, hey, I want to go develop games. Could you go into the background, any challenges, and is it easy, hard developing games?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so this is what I'm obviously very passionate about. I have moved my career in this direction. I would say that, just like with anything, the ideas are the easy part. So come up with a good idea first, and it's probably not going to be your first one. I've actually done for a number of years now. I've had a project where I try and write in my game design journal every day. And in 2016, I actually sort of formalized that, and I was like writing recaps even of them on my blog on Fridays. So I had like these, really pretty long blog posts on Friday that took me longer than I care to admit to write up these like just kind of recapping my ideas for the week. And I still try and come up with a new idea every day. And it's usually sort of about something that I've already been thinking about. So a lot of times, like it'll go 1 or 2 weeks with sort of riffing on the same idea, or maybe I've got a board game that I'm working on, and there'll just be like new mechanics that could work with the board game that I'm working on. So it's worth noting that game design, and that is sort of the ideas behind what the game is going to be, is a different discipline. Although of course often performed by the same person from the actual development of the game. So, and in video games anyway, the development of the game is mostly programming. But there are now a bunch of different ways that you can do it, either without programming at all or sort of with minimal programming. And the one that I use most is called Unity. So Unity is like I refer to it as like Photoshop for game development. So it's an application that you can download. It does have a free plan, so anyone can download it and start making games with it, like, right now. And it is really good. It's actually become kind of an industry standard. I mean, I would say, I think I saw some stat that like 70% of games made today are made with Unity. Certainly, like all the ones I've worked on in the last 3 years.
So Martin, so it sounds like unity.com, and you guys can check out the show notes for that link. So developing games can you make a living actually developing games, let's say for Android or for iOS? Is that successful? Is it lucrative, or is it really challenging to make money making games?
Yeah, so it is extremely challenging. Games are kind of like movies. They're a hit-driven industry. And so even the big players, the AAA studios, they'll release, say they release 3 games a year. One of those might make money, and maybe 1 in 6 will make money. But that one usually will make enough money that it pays for the development of the other ones. At least that's the hope. But like the movie industry, like, there's a lot of like game studios that pop up just to make one game and then die. And then, then the same people will go and start another company to make a game, and then that'll die. And so, it's kind of a weird, situation. So there's obviously a bunch of different tiers. Myself, I can make a game just with me. But like a lot of times that game will need, graphics and audio that I don't contribute, or that I'll have to find, or, pay someone else to produce. But anyway, I guess my point is that, it's still possible as a solo developer, as an indie developer, some people would call, to, make a living. But it's really, really uncommon and very difficult. So it's not like, it's not something I can say, oh yeah, just make a game and put it on the App Store and, you'll make some money. You might make some money. Probably you'll make some money, but it'll be like a few $100s. And that's the most common scenario, is that people will put in, months of work and then make a few $100s programming.
Okay. Hey, thanks for all that, Martin. And let's move on to something that really has you fired up in the area of gaming or programming or anything in general.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that you usually ask that question, my first thought immediately was just of the Nintendo Switch, which is just such an exciting platform for me. Like I think partly because it merges what I love about iOS and mobile in general, and that it's portable. And also, it docks to your TV and you can play games on the TV. I mean, I think I was just as excited when Apple announced the Apple TV, and, like that was going to be a platform that we could develop for. And then I think for the first like 4 years of the Apple TV or something, you couldn't develop for it. It was they didn't have a store or anything. And then they finally announced the store, and I got all fired up about it again. And then it had some real limitations. So for one thing, you can only connect two Bluetooth controllers to it, and for another, like they don't make the controllers. The controllers are third party, and like there's poor support, and it's just not something that Apple seems really focused on. Um, but obviously, Nintendo is really focused on the game experience and having controllers connected, and like you can actually hook up, I think, up to 8 controllers to the Nintendo Switch. It's such a cool platform. That's probably the thing I'm most excited about right now.
All right, Nintendo Switch. You can go to the show notes and check that out. I'll have a link to Nintendo Switch. And Martin, we're going to move on to a story. Everybody likes a story. At least I like stories. Could you take us to a time of an incredible aha moment you have and how you turn that into success and tell us a story?
I get a lot of my ideas, or maybe even most of my ideas, in the shower, and this is actually a documented phenomena. The something about the sensory experience, like your entire body, sort of, using your largest sensory organ, which is your skin, and sort of having that white noise of feeling. And anyway, so I have a distinct memory of, and it's not a very exciting story, but but I had this aha moment in the shower, where I was specifically thinking about grid movement in board games, and I was thinking about like, chess, and like how you could make another chess, like what would the pieces move like, and I was thinking about Tetris, and I sort of had this idea to mash up the two. And that's where I came up with the idea for Chestris, which is the name of my website. I ended up calling the game, when I actually released it, Action Chess. But sort of that's the first time that I thought to like mix up or mash up board games, or specifically like an abstract strategy game like chess, with an action puzzle game like Tetris. And specifically, the game that I sort of ended up coming up with was more of a mashup of chess and, there's a game called Tetris Attack, which is also an action puzzle game, but it doesn't have the sort of tetramino movement of Tetris. It's actually like, it's almost more of a match three variant. And so then those two games mashed up became my game Action Chess. And I think actually a lot of my game ideas are mashups of games like that I really like. So I like to think about chess. I like to think about Go. And I also really like these action puzzle games like Tetris, and Luminous is another one that I think about a lot. And I think that they have similar, even though they're such different experiences, I think they do similar things to your brain. Like you are sort of thinking in this almost loop of how can I fit a piece, or how can I, and they almost all have spatial awareness as part of their gameplay. Anyway, so that's not a very exciting story, but I definitely thought of it in the shower. And then I guess it was very shortly thereafter I started working on it, and it took me about 3 months. And then I finally had it ready to submit to the App Store, and submitted it to the App Store, and it was in the store. And I was definitely I was the only person I knew that had done that at the time. It was like early 2009. And that feeling of seeing something that you've created, in a store available, that's a really exciting, powerful feeling. And I think that's one of the sort of that's one of the most compelling reasons to go into computer science and software development, is that you get to make things that you can see other people use right away. And that's a really powerful feeling.
Yeah, thanks for that aha moment, Martin. And speaking of shower, I've got a waterproof notepad in my shower because I come up with ideas and I want a place to write them down. And I agree with that. Right? You come up with ideas in the shower. So STEM Nation, if you're out there and you have that same concept, go get a waterproof notepad, stick it in your shower so you can jot those down so you don't forget them. And Martin, we're going to go on to getting through college. You went for a English degree, but what are some things that you wish you knew when you're 18 heading off to college, or some recommendations you'd have for STEM Nation?
Yeah, so my biggest recommendation and my biggest regret is that I had a big gap in my math curricula. And specifically, I was basically done with my high school math requirement in ninth grade. And so I decided, well, I'm done with my requirement. I don't need to take math in 10th grade. And I actually, the next time I took math, or the next time I wanted to take math, was in college. And it had been so long since I'd taken pre-calc that I'd lost all of that skill, and it would have taken a lot of sort of self-discipline to get back up to speed. And so one thing I would definitely recommend is just don't have any math gap.
Hey, Martin, so why did you go for English? Why did you not go for a computer science or computer engineering degree?
Well, I've always been really motivated by I always thought I wanted to be X. And actually, like, I never really thought I wanted to be a game developer. I always thought I wanted to be a writer. So I'm really into science fiction, and I had written quite a bit of science fiction in high school, and I thought maybe it made sense to do more creative writing in college and go into that path. But if anything, making a living as a writer is actually harder than making a living as a game developer. So I still haven't had any books published. I think I've done, National Novel Writing Month like 4 times or something. So I've got like 4 or 5 manuscripts, but none of them are edited. They're all pretty terrible, probably. I think I probably have more short stories written, but so anyway, that was what I thought I wanted to do. And the programming and the computer stuff was always just sort of for fun, and that turned into the career.
So, Martin, for STEM Nation, for the students out there thinking that they want to be gamers, would you recommend that they get a degree in computer science?
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to be a game developer, my recommendation is always learn to program. So programming and software development that is not going to go away. There's never not going to be a need for software development. And it's such a new and sort of emerging field. I mean, even though, it's 20 or 30 years now that it's been around, but I mean, like, if you look at what careers overall are, there are more and more jobs every year. Software development is definitely one of those. And so it's partly just practical, like saying that, because there are so many different ways to approach game development. I mean, you could just make board games, and that's, that requires probably the least amount of sort of skill. Like, anyone can do that. You can start cutting up pieces of paper. You can think about systems and mechanics, and that's really fun. And I definitely recommend doing that if you want to make games. But it's not really learning a practical skill that you can use as a career. And I think writing software is absolutely a practical career that you can use. And to boot, I think it's really fun. So writing software kind of feels like solving puzzles all day. And, that's what I like. That's why I do it.
All right, Martin, thanks for that advice. And we're going to take a quick pause and thank our sponsor, Audible, who's offering a free audiobook. You can head over to STEMOnFireBook.com. That's STEMOnFireBook.com to get a free audiobook of your choosing. If you decide to cancel within 30 days, there's no cost, and you keep the audiobook. And Martin, it is lightning round time. Are you ready?
I am ready.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, I didn't take it, but one of my previous bosses said that I should move to San Francisco and raise some funding for a startup. And not my favorite idea, not my favorite startup idea, but just an idea that I thought was pretty good, and then work on that for about a year, and then sell that startup to self-fund the idea that I thought was really good. And and I didn't take the advice. I live in Minnesota, and there's not quite as much funding here as there is in San Francisco. But I've always had it in the back of my head, thinking like, oh yeah, maybe I should have done that.
And a personal habit that contributes to your success.
My success really is a result of just following what I think is really interesting and doing the things that I think are sort of the most fun for me. But not just like, watching TV. I mean, like, actually doing things and making things. And making things is like, that's what it's about.
And a favorite internet resource or phone app and why?
Probably Board Game Geek. So BoardGameGeek.com, it's basically the IMDb for board games. There's forums on there, and so there's lots of chat and like sort of social stuff going on there.
And if you had to pick one book, what would you recommend?
If you haven't read Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson, I think it's just so packed full of interesting ideas, just page to page. That's one that I highly recommend.
Thanks, Martin. And for you wannabe gamers, Martin has provided tons of value, but we're going to ask him for a little bit more with some parting piece of guidance for STEM Nation, and then we will say goodbye.
Follow your dreams and make things. Make the things that you want to see and the games that you want to play.
All right. Thanks for that, Martin. And with that, we will say goodbye.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, you're welcome. I hope you enjoyed our chat today with Martin. Head over to STEMonfire.com, subscribe to the email list to keep up with the latest happenings, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player and share it with a friend. Tune in next week when we talk with Owen, who is a sales professional. Until next time, I hope this chat has helped ignite your passion towards a STEM degree.